It is Locked On Jazz for the 3rd of June. Game 1 was an absolute stunner. What did the Boston Celtics possibly do to the Golden State Warriors, and what does it mean going forward? A season in review for Bojan Bogdanovic, all of ours favorites, but is he the right answer? And what's on the Cleveland Cavaliers menu that we might want? It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked On Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Give you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, and hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of every single day. We are available, free and available on all podcast apps, including on YouTube. We premiere on YouTube each day so that you can have a community experience. We're up on the podcast so you can have it on demand whenever you want. One quick few notes here to start the show. A bunch of people told me that the audio was coming in on one channel. I think I fixed that as we experiment. Thank you so much for letting me know. That's the key to everything, is that when we try these new things, these new snazzy graphics we have on YouTube and the bottom scroll and the various things, let me know what you want, how you want them to be different, what works for you, what doesn't, but also that's a great one. And I think I have it fixed today, so please let me know on that as well. So thank you very much. Again, right now we're premiering YouTube's at a set time. We tweet it out, and then all of you guys can have a community experience. Other times and then on the podcast, it's on demand. I think that's the best match from what I've heard from everyone. Not a lot of people have said they want me live the same way we used to do. What we'll do instead is we'll start doing some mailbags with some hashtags like AskLOJ, hashtag AskLOJ, and you can send in questions and I'll get them. And we actually have a new way that I can't seem to get to work where I can actually bring tweets up onto the screen, but right now I can't seem to get it to work. So there, it's supposed to come up right in the bottom there, and it doesn't, and I'll figure it out. But that's what we're all trying to do, is learn different things and things. And I hope you like the purple. Ryan says purple's in, so I'm going with purple. All right, quick little note. Tim McMahon on a podcast yesterday said that he thinks it's most likely that Quin Snyder does not return to the Utah Jazz. He's the ESPN reporter, and that the Jazz are hoping to get an answer soon rather than late in the summer. That was his comments. And so his expectation at this point is that Quin Snyder does not return to the Utah Jazz. Wow, the changes that we are embarking upon, 8 years, if that's the case. We'll wait and see. Tim's been reporting this story. I don't always kind of jump on reports like that. Tim's really good. And, we did jump on the Woj Tim report otherwise. So I thought, let's at least continue that. We'll see whether or not that turns out to be true. I have not heard anything of that sort. I don't have any inside scoop on that. I've not talked to Quinn and been in touch with him. So I don't have an insight there for you on that. All right, let's get to last night. That was a stunner of a game. The most lopsided fourth quarter that the NBA Finals has ever seen. I mean, that is a stunner. 0 games of NBA Finals experience, and they turn around and take a 12-point deficit in the fourth quarter and turn around and beat the Warriors, the experienced team, the veteran team at home with, again, the largest blowout ever in a fourth quarter. Now, we have, as we have learned up close and personally, there are more three-pointer shots, there are more variance, there are wider ranges. The lack of shots at the rim in the NBA right now is leading to these blowouts. That's my theory. I've kind of have not expressed this to you guys on this format, but we've talked a lot about how the rim is gone, and we'll touch on that here in a second in game one. The rim being gone means that there are more jump shots, which are lower percentage shots. Some were 3. And it means you have higher variances for what happens when shooting clicks in versus doesn't click in. And that's the impact that I think we're seeing and why we're seeing such kind of wild swings in games. But it is the first time ever in NBA Finals history that a team has gone from down 10 to up 10 in the fourth quarter. It is the largest fourth quarter blowout in NBA history. It is only the third loss by the Golden State Warriors in Game 1 under Steve Kerr. And teams win Game 1, win the series 71% of the time. This was a massive, massive game. The impact here, again, is you're not getting to the rim. So teams defensively have just said you're not getting to the rim. And even, Robert Williams does it, though I think he's not going to play a great deal in this series. And this is where I do think this series could swing back the other way. I think Al Horford, who I think is great, is the vital piece here. I don't know that Robert Williams will be able to play much more than 16 minutes a night in this series. He was -1 yesterday. Al Horford played 32. I'm curious to see how they're going to get those minutes up. Grant Williams didn't look great. The one matchup issue that I thought there's a matchup issue on each side in Game 1 I thought was a problem. I don't know that Boston can play Robert Williams a great deal because he can't play drop against Steph. You get the handoffs, Clay and Jordan Poole off Draymond, and they'll kill you. We saw it firsthand. The other one is the small lineup for Golden State didn't work. They really need Kevon Looney on the floor for the impact he's having on the game and the way he's playing. And frankly, Jordan Poole looked, a little like he was the one who got overwhelmed by the moment. Now, let's look at the shooting in this game because I think this is where there's a great deal of relevance of what's going to happen here in this series. The Boston Celtics took 8 shots at the rim, and the Golden State Warriors took 9 in the entire game. Like we've been talking about this, the rim is just gone from this league. You can't get to the rim anymore. And we presented this to you I presented this interesting moment where the teams that deny the rim the best are the teams that advance to the playoffs and are the best defensive teams. But the teams that advance offensively are the teams that don't use the rim at all. Well, Golden State took 9 shots at the rim, and the Celtics took 8 shots at the rim last night. Golden State goes 6 of 20 in the floater zone. Largely, that's Draymond missing those shots. And the Celtics go 10 of 26 in the floater zone. This is exactly what teams want. We're not going to let you get to the rim. We're going to make you take 40% shots in the floater zone and miss. And then what teams want is to get in the paint and kick out for three-point shooters. The Warriors took 37 above the break threes and hit 17 of 37. The Celtics took 29 above the break threes and hit 14. And this is where these teams are elite. Like this was an elite offensive game despite not getting to the rim. The offensive ratings last night, Boston at a 128, Golden State at a 117. Here's what's really interesting to me in this matchup on at least night 1. Boston's shot selection and shot distribution was considerably better than the Warriors. Now, 50% of all shots were threes. People can say they don't like it, but defenses have taken away the rim. So there's not a lot you're going to be able to do about it. And so both teams took 50% of their shots as threes, 48% for Boston, 51% for Golden State. Boston got better looks. They shot lights out. Both teams shot well above their norm. Defenses are going to dig in more and more as the series goes on with this shot selection. And we are going to have wild variance swings with this shot selection in this series if teams can't get to the rim. And they can't. If someone gets to the rim, it's going to be in transition or in some fashion of that nature. And I don't think we're going to see a great deal of that from either team. Last night, Golden State had 14 transition possessions and Boston had 13. Boston scored on theirs. Golden State didn't. That's the other one that I thought was really, really vital in last night's game. Was that Boston, when they got out in transition, their length, their athleticism, their youth, they finished. They averaged 1.17 points in transition, and Golden State averaged 0.67. So that swung the game. The other one that I mentioned already was Golden State playing the pick and handoff game and pick game with Robert Williams. And the Golden State had a field day, and Boston took that away late, and then Boston was rolling. One other note to look into this game at a great deal was Jaylen Brown's fourth quarter was largely when guarded by Klay Thompson. So they went at Klay Thompson a little bit there, and we'll see how that plays out. So those are my thoughts. A total stunner. Boston's roster is better. I said that the whole time. I thought they'd lose a game somewhere because it was their first time, and they didn't seem to react in that fashion. All right, Bojan Bogdanovic season review. I might not love any of our players more than Bojan Bogdanovic. Just everything about him. Is he the right guy for us? Is he the right guy moving forward? Do we have to keep him? Let's digest it. Let's look into it. Let's see what we think about it. A Friday edition of Locked On Jazz is brought to you by my good friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. The Murdochs are not charging more than MSRP. There is a car shortage. If you want to jump aboard before, so you head down to any of the 3 Murdoch locations. I'll set you up with a VIP meeting before you get there, and we will then get you drive the car and get on the list and get your car, and then you get like Christmas when it arrives. It's pretty cool. The Murdochs, as we mentioned, total class, not charging more than MSRP for any of their cars, which is awesome. We can get you set up beforehand. The Palisade is the big SUV that's amazing. If you're looking for something more affordable, the Elantra won the North American Car of the Year last year, and every single reason why. And I'm currently driving the Sonata, which is their nicer sedan, and I can't imagine why you'd need more or want more out of a car than the Sonata. It is just terrific. So stop by Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. And please, just email me first at dlock09@gmail.com, and I'll set you up with the meeting beforehand. Today's show is also brought to you by Built Bar. What exciting things are up at Built Bar right now? The best tasting protein bar in the market. I was out at a golf tournament yesterday. A good friend of mine, Alma, was with me. He was hungry. I said, here, have a Built Bar. He goes, well, I don't really love chocolate. I've never had one of these before. I'm like, Alma, just eat. Come on, man. You're hungry. It's fine. I got one here. He took the brownie batter puff, and he was like, what's the promo code? I was like, LOCKED15, Alma. LOCKED15 is what you need for your brownie batter puff. Built Bar, and get 15% off your whole order. Just amazing. If you haven't had the brownie batter puff, and he's like, I don't even like chocolate that much. Grasshopper cookie is available as well. That's my daughter's favorite. We've made that order. 150 calories, 17 grams of protein, 6 grams of sugar. I'm a fan of the coconut marshmallow puff. Same macros, 140 calories, 17 grams of protein, collagen infused marshmallow, 6 grams of sugar. Also the churro. And by the way, the orange is back. If you're a fan of the orange, they've dropped the orange today, and orange is back. Is Built continually bringing out new items for you. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCK15. Be like Alma. Try a Built Bar and love it. All right, Bojan Bogdanovic. Absolutely. I said it during the playoffs. I think all of us saw it during the playoffs. If you're going to tell me I have to go down a dark alley, a playoff dark alley with any of our players, I want to go down with Bojan Bogdanovic. And he is just solid. He's unflustered. He plays the game right. He's there every night. He doesn't miss games, except for that calf strain. But, you knew he was seriously injured when that happened. He's just wildly consistent. His three-point shooting, his 3 years in Utah, 41, 39, 39. His two-point shooting got way better this year. He went from shooting 48% the last 2 years to 52% from 2 this year. So his effective field goal percentage was much better. His free throws were kind of on par to where he always is. He was down from 2 years ago, but the same. His rebounding was on par, which is unfortunate because he's just a really poor rebounder for his position. But all of his other numbers, the guy is just solid. Now, he is 33 years old. He just turned 33 in April. He's on the wrong side of the age game. He's 6'7" and 226 pounds. So he has the perfect body. And those are the kind of bodies that age better in this league than others. But here's some interesting things on Bojan. And I honestly, I'm flummoxed on what the answer with Bojan. First thing is, if you watch the NBA Finals right now, there's not a bad defensive player on the floor. Now, I don't know whether I actually think that Bojan Bogdanovic is a bad defensive player. I think he's not a great defensive player, but he battles and he tries and he does all of those kind of things. And so, his effort out there defensively is good, but I do go back to one of the really, really early games this year against Denver where Aaron Gordon just punked him. Aaron Gordon just literally isolated him on the right wing 5 straight times and scored on him. And to me, that was a red flag at that moment of the season of oh geez, people just have our guys and believe they can take our guys anytime they want. And that made, that is like a scarred memory into my brain. So I don't think he's a bad defensive player, but he's certainly not a good defensive player. And he's a defensive player people are going to go shoot out and try to go get. I think that's what concerns me the most about what's going on with Bojan Bogdanovic defensively. The age worries me a little bit too. At 33 years old, that at some point this should decline. There aren't a lot of numbers. The numbers I look for on decline on players are dunks, particularly for athletic players. His dunks were the exact same numbers they were a year ago. I look for percentage of shots at the rim. So percentage of field goal attempts at the rim. He went from 18% to 15%. It's a drop. He's dropped considerably since he left Indiana and came to Utah. The thing about Bojan that I don't think people realize the most is that what he truly is a transition player. And our lack of ball movement this year and lack of getting out and playing in transition as much as we would probably have liked hurt Bojan. If you go back to Bojan Bogdanovic, when he was with the Indiana Pacers, he played 25% of his possessions in transition. This year, he played 21.5% of his possessions in transition. His effective field goal percentage was 59%. He wasn't as good, actually, in transition as he was a year prior. He was classified by just kind of as a middle-of-the-range points per possession guy. He's always been a little bit better. This was up from a year ago where he was just at 19%. Again, his effective field goal percentage was at 58%. And his first year with the Jazz, it was when he came over from Indiana, he was actually only at 16% transition. So he's actually jumped up from 16 to 19 to 21% and was able to be kind of the one guy that was out there. His effectiveness went down a tiny bit. But he's really a guy who actually needs to get out into the open floor and play in that way. And that's when he gets to the rim. That's when he gets to some of these other things. So the fact that he's gotten less of that in Utah is a little bit because only as we integrated the Bojan 3 and getting him out more and more in the last few years, did he actually get back to that level of use of transition that he had when he was with the Indiana Pacers. So the other aspect is his contract. So Bojan has $19.5 million left on his contract this year. When you look at a player, when you look at the Jazz, we talk about this a lot. You can acquire a player in 3 different fashions: free agency, draft, and trades. Free agency is difficult for us because we're a small market. It is for most markets, not just for the Jazz, but for most markets. Free agents, trade is an option, and then draft, we don't have a lot of picks. The concern I have is if we take a player to the last day of their contract because we love them and want to go down playoff dark alleys with them and we adore them, then we end up with nothing for them because even though we get their cap space, we don't have the ability to fill that cap space by just taking it with free agency, or if we've already paid for Donovan and Rudy, we're in all likelihood added someone, we're in all likelihood over the cap. And then if we're over the cap, when you lose that free agent, you don't get that slot, right? So if you lose a $17 million player and you're over the cap, you don't get $17 million. It's only if you're under the cap that you then just fill it. But we wouldn't likely fill it with another piece anyway because we don't usually have the ability to sign free agents, though we did sign Bojan. So the way I would look at this is I love Bojan. I think there's an incredible value in having a 6'8 shooter that can get 7 or 8, 9 threes off in a game, who can shoot them at 40%. I think they're few and far between in this league and wildly important. And I don't really know how you move Bojan and get better for it. But it would have to be one of the things I most heavily investigated if I was a member of the Utah Jazz front office is moving Bojan Bogdanovic because of the fact he's 33 years old and in the final year of his contract. And for us to be acquiring talent, that's really our mechanism of doing it, is signing a player and then moving them for the next version of our player. And so the way the fundamentals work and our limitations as a franchise, because of our lack of draft capital and because we're not an appealing free agent market, means that really what we have to do is trade our players before their contracts expire so that we can bring in the next player that we can look to have. And because of that, which has absolutely nothing to do with Bojan, but just the pure fundamentals of being the Utah Jazz, I think you have to strongly consider whether or not this is a piece that you move, as much as you love every aspect of him, and understand that trying to replicate a 6'8" potent three-point shooter on the perimeter is going to be wildly difficult and probably something that unless you're totally nail it, you don't get better doing. But you still better get that talent that comes in for it. Really difficult situation on that. We'll look at the Cleveland Cavaliers menu. A lot of rumors. Mike Conley for Caris LaVert was a hot rumor. Do we buy into that one? And is that something the Utah Jazz should do? Thanks very much for making Locked On Jazz your first listen of the day. I greatly appreciate it. And thank you very much for jumping aboard the program today. For your second listen, make sure you listen to Locked On NBA Big Board, our draft podcast with the fabulous Rafael Barlow, Richard Stamen, Sam Ferris, and Leaf Tulane, all doing great work. Rising stars in the draft world. That oxygen was largely taken by Chad Ford, and then by Jonathan Givony, and then by Mike Schmidt, and he's going to the Blazers. So there's a gap in the world, and these are the rising draft stars that are going to be out there for you. I'm really impressed by the work and the knowledge and the content that they put out on a daily basis at Locked On NBA Big Board. All right, so the Cleveland Cavaliers are the focus of our menu that we're looking at today and possible trades with the Cleveland Cavaliers. And if we look at their roster, let's run through and update everybody what their roster is. There's a bunch of rumors involving the Jazz and the Cleveland Cavaliers right now. So Kevin Love is, let's see if I can bring this over here for everyone. The site I'm using here just runs so many ads. Like you just have to be, let's see if I can do this. Display. There we go. Look at me actually getting it right. I'm learning how to use all these features and become modern. So Kevin Love is if you're on YouTube, you are seeing the screen. Thanks to Sport Track for this. Kevin Love's at $28.9 million. He had a good year, but I'm not sure that's a target. Jared Allen is at 20 years for like 4 years. Jared Allen's going to be really interesting. He's going to have a Rudy Gobert trajectory career here. He's a terrific talent. He changed games for them this year. And now it's going to be a question as they get better and better and the spotlight gets on him, how it works out. Caris LaVert is at 18.8 and a free agent after this year. He is long, athletic, out of the University of Michigan, oft injured. And from a points gain standpoint, he has always been one of the least efficient offensive players. He is loved in all sorts of circles for his athleticism and all sorts of things that he does. But I am not actually the largest Caris LaVert fan because of my offensive metric system. He's an inefficient offensive player. I think those guys are really hard to handle. Last year, in his 2 spots, Indiana and Cleveland shot 32% from 3. The year before, he shot 32% from 3. His career is 33. His overall shooting is 43.4. He's thought of to be an elite athlete. His rim finishing this year in Cleveland was bad. They don't have a lot of space on the floor, but he's only 66% at the rim, which is good, but it's not exquisite in any way. I see Caris LaVert bouncing around. Every time Caris LaVert gets traded, somebody's like, oh, this is amazing, and to me, that's a high volume, inefficient offensive player, and those scare me. Lauri Markkanen is still really interesting to me. He's only 25 years old. At some point, he is what he is. And I'm not sure that that's that bad. When he was in Chicago and Lauri Markkanen was thought of as the 7th pick of the draft and all sorts of pressure, then it fell, they wanted more out of him. The last 2 years, he has shot 40% and 36% from three, taking 6 threes a game. You cannot find 7-footers that can shoot 6 and 7 threes a game at a high percentage. That's a pretty special talent. He is a great free throw shooter, 85%. So my guess is that three-point shooting is only going to elevate. I would guess that the first half of his career, he's a 36% three-point shooter, and he becomes a 38 or 39%. He's not a great defensive player. He's not a great rebounder. Like we just talked about, Bojan I just kind of skipped over it. He's just a bad rebounder. So's Lauri Markkanen. Like he's basically a 7-foot tall shooting guard. And I don't, you get him and you'd think he's 7 feet tall and you'd be excited about the idea that maybe you could have him play your center. I truly think that the problem that Lauri Markkanen has is he's a 7-foot tall. I think JB Bickerstaff was really smart with him this year. He's a 7-foot tall shooting guard, small forward, if nothing else. And so then you got to figure out how you're using him defensively at 7 feet tall. And that is the problem. And this is, again, where if you watch the playoffs right now, nobody out there is a bad defensive player. And those players that are bad defensive players prior to that got exposed. But I'm not down on Lauri Markkanen at all. And I don't know that the model that Cleveland was playing with last year, that they got all these accolades for, which was the 3 7-footers, is really a long-term answer for them. Worth noting, by the way, that when Markkanen was on the floor last year, Cleveland's offense was 7 points per 100 possessions better than when he was off. Now, when he was on the floor defensively, they were worse. So he's a unique offensive player. I didn't actually plan this, but I think a really interesting question would be, would Cleveland do, and what are the numbers? Would Cleveland do Bojan Bogdanovic for Lauri Markkanen? I think actually both teams are better off on a deal like that a little bit. From the Jazz, they get 3 years of player control on a younger player that's different. For the Cavaliers, they get a veteran who knows how to play and probably fits their roster a little better. That was not my intention at all. I just kind of stumbled into that, but that's actually, Markkanen's kind of the model by which I'm talking about in the previous segment of where you're trying to take a player who's under contract, who has a few more years left, and adding him onto your roster because that's your mechanism by which you're able to add players. That's an interesting one to me. Of good basketball discussion, Bojan's a better player, is better shooter, is a better understander of how to win, plays better. Markkanen brings some unique elements to who you are, what you're playing, and I think is still got an uptick. There's been some questions in his career of whether or not he loves it or not, and whether he has that spark. I sometimes think that is unfair, particularly European players get labeled with that. But Lauri's been pretty soft also at different times in his career. And I think is a little inexperienced. Played 1 year at Arizona, and now you're working with him. That's a piece of clay still. At 25 years old, I'd be pretty interested. Darius Garland's certainly not going to be available. Evan Mobley's certainly not going to be level. C.D. Osman, to me, is a poor man's Joe Ingles. He was great against us. I like him a lot more because of the fact that he was so good against us in a given game. If you dig into his numbers, it doesn't always match. Isaac Okoro, I'm assuming, is still a major piece of Cleveland's future. In fact, Garland, I really look at this team as Jarrett Allen, Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, and Evan Mobley. To me, that's the future of the Cavaliers. This is why Mike Conley's name came up. Does he veteran them in some way? I don't know that they need Mike Conley. They have I think really truly they have Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen, and that's their 4-piece future. And they're going to start moving the other pieces around. That's why I expect that Lauri Markkanen would get moved if they can keep C.D. Osman or Jetty Osman on a $7 to $8 million contract. That's a fabulous deal for them, and we'll see where they go from there. But it's kind of it's an interesting roster, and I think it's a roster that actually becomes more interesting for a team like us. I do think Lauri Markkanen's a player that, if I'm the Jazz front office, I'm certainly playing around with that. It's 2 years player control. It's a developing shooter. It's a unique talent and size. It's positional. one thing you've heard Danny Ainge talk about is having positional, size advantage, positional size advantage, and you definitely would have that. All right, have a great weekend. We'll be back with you Monday. Watch my Twitter, Locked On Jazz. I'm going to try to get that tweet thing working. Maybe we'll do a Monday mailbag. Hope you have a great one. Thanks very much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you. Talk to you soon.